Thank you guys for joining us once again on the Morning Update Show right here on Africatown Media Network. I'm your co-host Trey Holiday, and I am so elated to bring back Dr. Mook with UW Labs right here on the stage and on the scene. We're so glad that you came back. The first time that you were here, we just got rave reviews. So thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me back. It's so nice to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we know that there's so many things, right? The last time you were here, you were giving us some updates on how things are working in the lab in regards to the vaccine, right, that's being created. But I know that, we've been covering the disparities in the community regarding Black people in particular. And, you and I were talking a little bit before the show. I really want our audience to hear from a scientific perspective how the virus is affecting Black people and why these disparities exist.
Yeah, no, I mean, the socioeconomic component of this is very important. The social justice element is very important, and it should not be minimized, and we should not delegitimize that because it definitely plays a role. However, there is some science that we can get into and really talk about and unpack. This is why I love coming onto this show, because last time so many people were reaching out and saying, hey, I've never seen a Black scientist that I can have access to. And that is so important, to have Black scientists being visible, being readily available to answer questions, to fact check some of these conspiracy theories that are out in the media,
yes,
and to sort of silence the noise there so that we can focus and direct our resources all towards one common goal that will allow us to escape some of these nuances that are happening with this COVID-19 pandemic.
Absolutely. And thank you for being our local expert right here in Seattle, doing the work right here at UW. So we know that we can always reach out to Dr. Mook. We can DM you. We can send you a text real quick so you can fact check for us and make sure we stay on the right track. So let's get into it. What are some of the scientific details that people may not understand in regards to the disparities we're seeing?
Yeah, let's jump into it. The number of Black deaths associated with COVID-19 is disproportionately unreal. I mean, if you look at cities like Chicago, for instance, 70% of the deaths that are reported associated with COVID-19 are Black people. And yet the percentage of the population in Chicago that makes up Black people is less than 25%. Wow. So how do those numbers match up? That really doesn't make sense. And then when you take into account that scientifically, genetically, the human race, in order to be called a human, you have to be 99% genetically similar to everyone. So I'm talking about Black, white, Asian, Latino. I'm talking about male, female, in between. I'm talking about old, young. All of that is genetically very similar. All our differences due to skin color, due to gender, due to age, are all amounting to 0.2%, less than 0.2% based on differences in your genetic material. And what a virus is simply a genetic piece of information covered by protein that is attacking us. And so we have a common enemy as the human race, but why is it that Black people are being disproportionately affected? And where that comes into, it comes into our lived experience. Even though genetically we're the same with every other human on this race, our lived experience as Black people has been dramatically different. And so we should talk more about that and how that relates with science.
Wow. Well, who would have known? I mean, on the show here, we're always talking about these things. We know this. If you're a Black person in America, you know that there's a possibility you may have a higher blood pressure than someone
right,
who is not Black, right? Because maybe they're dealing with some type of, privilege, right, that we don't experience. So I didn't realize that there were scientific measures behind this. Please explain.
Yeah, no, and you're talking about privilege right now. That is the key term right there, is the lived experience that we have lacks in privilege in many different socioeconomic structure. This is a structural thing that exists. Many different structural policies have been put in place, not just in America, but really globally, so that Black people are disenfranchised in many different parts. So when we look in particular at COVID-19, this is the disease, coronavirus infectious disease 19, that was discovered in November 2019. The virus that causes it, SARS-CoV-2, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. Now, when we're talking about the viruses attacking our respiratory system, and then we look at where are most of our Black people living, Because of structural policies that have been put in place, like redlining, we live in areas that are close to, say, buses. We often take buses to go to work and commute with buses. All of those toxic fumes that we are breathing into our respiratory system is allowing us to have pre-existing conditions that are making us vulnerable to death and adverse effects caused by COVID-19 in a way that our white counterparts do not have to struggle with. So the privilege and access to resources that they have, we don't have. And so the question is, what do we do about it, Trey?
Right, right. I mean, this is where the land trust, and I think, you know, working in a community is so important, because the people resolve is where you see change, right? It's got to come from that ground up, that grassroots level. Well, Dr. Mook, what else is it regarding science and scientifically speaking that we can tie to some of these disparities?
Yeah, there's something called the empathy gap when it comes to hospitals. You know, Black women disproportionately are dying due to labor in a way that white women do not. And that is because when Black people go into hospitals and claim pain in certain areas and actually talk about their symptoms, they are not readily listened to. There are stereotypes that Black people can resist pain to certain, extents. I mean, we have seen this historically. Scientists have, unfortunately, have misused science to a way that now the Black community mistrusts it. And that's why we need Black scientists in the room, because I can tell you right now that no Black scientist would have signed off that experiment. We're not going to watch people die, particularly one race of people that you're deeming inferior, And so when we talk about things like the empathy gap, and when we talk about having Black scientists in the room, this is from a, yes, socioeconomic standpoint, but it is the science basis of that socioeconomic standpoint. It's where the intersection between the two lies. And so what we need to do is to make sure that when we are having our voices heard, we're amplifying the voices of the Black scientists we know in our communities, right? So that we make sure that we have people that we can hold accountable directly in our communities, but also they are having access to the information that we need, so that we're not focusing our resources on conspiracy theories and nonsense, and really aligning our resources together in a way that can benefit our community.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better. Dr. Mook, thank you again for joining us. This has been such an invigorating conversation. You guys, please, 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 you guys can find Dr. Mook on Instagram. Look up Tamuka Investments.
That's right.
And you guys can find him on Instagram. He has some amazing content there for you guys with his hip-hop is chemistry. I mean, he is the hip-hop chemist. You know what? I'm just excited. Thank you so much. I know we'll have you on again because, as always, you bring the heat. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Trey. It's such a pleasure to be here every single time. We're investing in our community, and I love that. I love that so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, you guys. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. You're watching the Morning Update Show on Africatown Media Network.